must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
In many parts of Africa, there is always a struggle for power. Struggles for power begin from the struggles for internal democratization of our parties or units where we belong when we come to power. The politics of compensational structure, the politics of deficit, the beginning from a deficit that I had a deficit. I had a deficit before I was born, or when I was born. I found myself in a poor family. It's the politics of compensation that haunts Africa today. Many people want to take on leadership, but it's the leadership as a basis of where you came from, or the leadership has qualities.
My father bought me my first shoe in 1981 from a Mr. Onyango on the street for 60 shillings because he could not afford the butter shoes. Why am I saying this? Today, as you can see, the gentleman who did not have shoes is sitting at the high table. With the son of the founding father.
Sasa kama nitaambiwa naongea siasa, lakini I'm not, I promise. I have no such intention. But, you know, when you hear people out there, you know, they talk, oh, huyu mtu fulani, dynasty hii, sijui dynasty hii. It's not about that. Leadership is not about where you were born. It's not about where you came from. It's not about the color of your skin. It is not about your tribe. It is just about a desire to serve, a desire to do good, a desire to make a difference in the lives of people. And anybody can do that.
For a leader to be a leader, he must have qualities. Identify himself with qualities of good behavior, qualities of no corruption, qualities of no hatred, qualities of engagement, discussion with others, collective responsibility, listening to the people. These are the qualities. A leader who delivers does not need to have a background. A leader who delivers can't deliver without a background of the rich or the poor. Many people in Africa seem to be misinterpreting that once you are born, you directed God to produce you in a particular family. None of us would have been where we are had we actually had a message from God where we would be born. I therefore look at this as compensational politics. Meritocracy is the answer. Meritocracy gives you the position that you yearn for. Meritocracy delivers you a position. Meritocracy gives you what you are doing for the people of Kenya or Uganda or whatever country where you are in Africa. But if you don't have these qualities, even if you are born from a family that had the whole world as theirs, then you cannot be a leader. It is therefore very important that leaders who yearn to become leaders in Africa stop the usage of compensational politics. The politics that you want to compensate on others simply because you were poor, simply because you didn't go to a good school, simply because you don't drink in the same place where they drink, simply because you don't eat in that restaurant, simply because you don't have cars. That politics has got syndromes, traits of people who are either corrupt or have hatred or have a problem on itself. I therefore call upon you people to re-examine as Africans that wherever you come from, the background you come from, you are an African. You can deliver something for your country. You don't need to be able, you don't need to come to compensate for the lost past, because with such attitude, you will grab everything and your country will collapse. Thank you very much for listening.
Launching the BBI Task Force report. Makofi.
Your Excellency, I am very happy that the document, the recommendations, and the proposals that have been put forward informs us on how to build institutions to get our politics away from personalities and ethnicities to institutions that will carry all of us irrespective of who we are, where we come from, the language we speak, or the political party we subscribe to.
Kusema ya kwamba pesa mingi ije mashinani, tunaunga mkono. Ipelekwe mpaka ifike kama kuanzia 35% kuelekea juu. Hiyo pesa itumike kwa mambo ya maendeleo, not for consumption. Recurrent expenditure should not be above 30%. 70% should go for development.
Ni kwa nini baada ya kila miaka mitano tunaenda miaka mitatu ya kazi, miaka ya 2 tunapoteza kwa sababu siasa imechacha? Tunataka tuulize wafanyabiashara wetu wenzetu, ni nini inawazuia? Ni nini tuwaweza kufanya ndio tuhakikishe ya kwamba biashara zenu hazisimami? We must have development plans that are 20 years plus if we are to resolve our problems, my brothers and sisters. Tunataka tuwapatie assurance ya kwamba wanaweza kupatia wananchi mikopo ya miaka 10, miaka 15, kwa sababu they have confidence ya kwamba Kenya will be stable and Kenya will always have leadership, whoever it is.
You indeed told me that a jobless Kenyan is a desperate Kenyan. You told me also that a hungry Kenyan is a negative Kenyan. You told me that a sick Kenyan is a weak Kenyan, and you also told us that a homeless Kenyan is a Kenyan without hope. You, the Kenyan people, spoke clearly. We want dignity. We want to put enough food on our tables, and we want a lower cost of living. We listened. Since, and on reflection, I have come up with 4 responses to these concerns, and I call them the big 4. Food security, affordable housing, manufacturing, and affordable health care for all.
That is the position on the big 4. Food security, health, universal health care, housing, affordable housing, manufacturing. Many of the people in the rural areas would like to know how food security is very important, to have food enough for eating and surplus for export, to have enough food to feed families. Many people would like to know what universal health care is. We need to start to talk to people, to tell them, to do documentaries. How is the fishing? What type of fishing can be done on a small 1 acre? We need to go out inside in the villages, get our teams that can come up with all documentaries, weekly, daily, so that fishing can be improved. Fishing can become one of the food. When people talk about food in Africa, Miriam, in Siaya, for example, people think of the maize, but fish is also a food item that must be stored, that must have facilities for.
The 4th element is food security and nutrition. Since independence, we as a people have sought to ensure that our citizens enjoy food security and proper nutrition. And while we have made good progress, the challenge, however, remains yet to be fully conquered. It is time to address once and for all the multiple and interlocking factors that leave too many Kenyans at risk of hunger. Our immediate actions start now. We will bring targeted taxation to bear to put arable land to use. We will continue to encourage and facilitate large-scale commercial agriculture to diversify our staples through irrigation and other technologies. We will protect our water towers. Small-scale farmers will receive better extension services and market access, and subsidies will be redesigned to improve food yields and production quality.
We have said 3 items: obstacles, success, and the challenges. One of the obstacles is when the agenda was set out, there was quite a lot of politics that was involved. So time has come for us to remove politics from it and assure the people, the ordinary people, the ordinary mwananchi, citizen of Kenya, that if you have this, you can improve the food security. If you do this, you'll improve the healthcare system. If you do this, if you can plan for a cheaper housing in your local area, a cheaper industry, an industry, a cottage industry. For example, look at what we want people. How many youths can gather themselves into a group in Kayole? 10 youths. If you can be washing people's clothes, ironing them, their shirts, when they come from school, they pay you 300 shillings or 100 shillings, Bob, or 20. And if you are doing that as a small group, this is, you see, a small cottage industry begins there. Then you end up with a huge, dry cleaner in Kayole, made by youth. But most of the people in our African context, especially Kenya and Uganda and other places, people are focused on the government getting them the jobs. But there is a job. There is the youth fund where you can go and borrow 50,000 shillings and buy dryer, buy this, buy that. You iron people's clothes. There are so many people who are lazy who want, I'm not condemning them, but they go to work very early in the morning. They don't have time to wash this cloth. But you can say, bring your shirts here. You'll have them in the tomorrow morning, you put in a dryer, iron, another you fish ironing, you earn your living. You create employment for yourselves and for the people surrounding you.
So job creation.
I want you in this spirit to also turn to the person sitting or standing next to you. Greet them and say how proud you are to be Kenyan, and tell them that you are their keeper. Because to be Kenyan, at its core, is about loving your neighbor.
Good morning to you, and thank you for joining us. It is the 20th of January 2019. The show is Good Morning Africa, and the station is Punchline Africa TV. We're coming to you all the way from the Kenya's capital here in Nairobi. A bright and sunny morning. My name is Miriam Ogutu, and a very warm welcome to you where you're watching us. Good afternoon, good evening. I've seen some of our viewers who I think sometimes watch us. Is it from Australia? And thereabout, and thank you so much. I see you've started writing to us, Chol Makor, Tobias, and the rest of you. Keep writing, as I have so much in store for us today. Of course, the latest update about the Angola case, where the richest woman in Africa, the daughter of the former Angolan president Dos Santos, there, Isabel Dos Santos, there's now evidence over how much money she stole from the state during her father's tenure. Remember, her father was the president of Angola for 38 good years. And of course, Isabel Dos Santos today, she's said to be a very, hardworking businesswoman. And she's also, I think, an engineer, if I'm not wrong. That is her profession. And of course, she is the richest woman in Africa, but now she's facing a lot of corruption charges there and money laundering and other things, and exploiting her own country during the days when her father was the president of Angola. So I will bring you the latest there. And also we have the latest from Sudan. Of course, Libya, remember there was a Berlin conference there that was convened by Angela Merkel, the chancellor, German's chancellor there, and she wanted to find solutions for what is happening in Libya. And so I'll let you know the latest there. And also, we have the latest from Amazonia and also Cameroon generally. Elections happened in Comoros yesterday, and as well as South Sudan. Now Riek Machar has some preconditions he would like met, before the signing of the peace deal. Remember, the deadline is on the 22nd of February, that is next month, and we shall start our countdown, perhaps at the beginning of February or thereabout in a few days, and see this time will the peace hold, will they meet the deadline, because this has been something that has been very elusive. Several times they've failed to meet the deadlines, and last year they failed twice. The May deadline as well as the November deadline. And also we'll look at Zimbabwe. A lot of news from Zimbabwe. Remember, the deputy president, Peter Chiwenga, had taken the wife to the court, and now she has been released. And as well, the United Kingdom is having the UK-Africa Summit. Zimbabwe was not invited. What is really happening? As well as, what else do we have? Okay, so the MDC, apparently their offices were raided by the government last week there, and also some information from Biafra. We have some news from Biafra today. So keep it here. That is just in a nutshell. And when I was just preparing, just a few minutes ago, I was watching the live proceedings from Botswana, where the opposition party UDC, of course, they petitioned the results of the presidential elections. The elections were held last year in October, and the opposition was not very happy with the results. They said the elections were marred with a lot of malpractice, so they took the case. So now the petition is ongoing there in the High Court of Botswana, where the UDC, election petition is currently underway. So this is a story we've been following, and so we shall bring you the latest. At the same time, of course, Babu Owino, a member of parliament here in Kenya, shot, I don't know if I should say allegedly, because there is a video showing, from a club. He shot a DJ in a club early in the morning, and so right now the case is ongoing in one of the courts here in Kenya, and he has been charged with attempted murder. So that is the latest, and it is happening right now. So perhaps we'll have an update before the end of the show. If not, then we shall bring you an update tomorrow. But right now, I would like for us to look at what's making headlines here in Kenya, even as we look at President Uhuru Kenyatta's legacy and all of that. And then shortly thereafter, we shall come back and look at these African stories in detail. So let's start with the Standard newspaper, where Raila is Uhuru's new Mr. Fix-It. That is the headline, according to the Standard newspaper. Now, ODM leader has turned from a fierce critic to a staunch ally of President, helping champion his cause both in parliament and public meetings. And I think this ally, I think, must be one of the most important allies that President Uhuru Kenyatta, I can say, has heard in his presidency. Remember, in his first term, after President Kenyatta fought the case that he had at the ICC, and then after that, now towards the elections, there was a lot of protest that a lot of times were organized by the opposition, led by Raila Odinga. So, the opposition was quite a headache to President Uhuru Kenyatta, and that he said that President was not able to do much in his first term because of that, and also the ICC case that he was battling, at The Hague. But now they have become very close, and they've worked their bromance, and they're working together. And you will see Raila Odinga was the one who was very critical of this government. And every now and then he was the one who will come up with the exposés, exposing the misuse of public funds and the corruption that was going on in these parastatals. But now, since the handshake on March 2018, they formed a very strong ally that is seen to have, sidelined Deputy President William Ruto, who after the handshake has not been a very happy man. And we've seen how that has played out in the public arena. So now this headline by the Standard newspaper is very interesting, because now somebody who was very critical of the president, after the handshake, the tides have turned, and he's now the staunch ally of President Uhuru Kenyatta. And I say that this, I think, is an ally that is very important to the president, because after the elections we had in 2017 and the culmination of that, there were even calls from the opposition led by Mr. Raila Odinga that even the country should be split into two, so that one country that is allied to President and his party and his supporters could have one Kenya, and then the other party that was aggrieved and has felt there's been a perennial, stealing of votes and manipulation of the electoral process, they said, we've had enough of that, so let's just have our own country. So it had gotten to those levels before that handshake took place. And so, of course, that also gave President Uhuru Kenyatta a lot of headache there. And remember the inauguration of, Raila Odinga as the people's president. Remember that happened there earlier 2018 there, that Miguna, that is what actually has made Miguna leave the country. After that, the police went for him and other people, but especially him, because he seems to be the person who I think the oath of office was done. He officiated that, but that is that. And for Uhuru and Raila, this is water under the bridge. And so now Raila has become that one person that champions our president's cause, both in parliament and public meetings. I'm telling you, politics is very, very interesting. So if you're a Kenyan out there, and you remember towards the electioneering period in 2017, and of course when you watch even the clips from the rallies and the utterances that are being made by some of these leaders, you would understand. And then you look at what is happening today, then you will know that politics, it's never that serious. It's not that personal. Because sometimes they come out, they tell us these things, and we take it so personally because my leader doesn't like that person. So I don't like that person. And so what will happen now? I'll come and burn their homes if I don't agree with their political lining. I'll come and hurt them because now we are in a political season, and so because I don't agree with what they stand for, so I don't like them at all. So I'd rather just harm them, and that is what you've been seeing happening every electioneering period here in Kenya. So I'm just hoping and praying that this unity between President Uhuru Kenyatta and Mr. Raila Odinga will actually give us a long-term, this moving forward, we can get a long-term solution for the perennial, chaos that accompanies Kenya's electoral period there. So that story is on page 4 of the Standard newspaper, and we've seen them enjoy a good time in public, enjoying a good laugh. And if Vice President Mr. Dr. William Ruto is in that company, judging from his body language, you can always tell he's not the happiest person. And so Orange Democratic Movement leader Raila Odinga is fast emerging as President Kenyatta's most trusted point man in politics and public affairs. Whether in parliament or public rallies or official functions, Raila is increasingly taking on a leading role in championing President Uhuru Kenyatta's cause. For example, the former Prime Minister is leading a national drive for constitutional and institutional reform under the Building Bridges Initiative, and whose schedule of the next 7 public meetings, starting with the Mombasa on January 25th and capping in Nairobi on February 26th, emerged yesterday on behalf of the president. So they are really, really working together. And of course, yesterday while we were talking about the same here, we mentioned how, Deputy President William Ruto, together with some other politicians who are allied to him, are not included in this agenda to popularize the BBI report. So there it is, and also on the headlines today. So the BBI national meetings, this is just a schedule for that. 25th January will be in Mombasa. 22nd February, that will be in Embu and Meru. 9th February in Garissa. 16th February in Eldoret. 17th in Suswa. 25th in Kiambu, and 26th in Nairobi. So that all that will happen in February. So if you're interested and you want to know more about BBI, although what happened in Kakamega, and yesterday we were having this conversation, at some point we were very frank, and our viewers here also, raised some very important points that if they really want to drum up and to make Kenyans understand this BBI and what it's all about, then the politicians who are involved, especially starting with Mr. Raila Odinga, should stay away from politics. Don't mix party politics or any other kind of politics with the BBI, because now it has taken a very political tone, and some Kenyans who perhaps did not understand and were interested in getting, some more information and understanding what the document is all about. Once they see this too heavy politicking around it, that puts them off, because the Kenyans who do not know much about the BBI, and they would like an opportunity and a chance to be explained to get a copy, to understand what this BBI is all about. But when our leaders go to these, these events and functions that is meant to popularize and to familiarize the people with the BBI, and then it turns into a political rally, then that is not very nice. It takes a political rally nature, then that is not very good. And even for anybody who perhaps did not understand but was willing to be open, might be turned off. The people could be willing to be supporting this BBI, but they might not be agreeing with the political, political lining of some of the leaders who are active participants in this BBI report. So if you bring the politics first and you just make it all about politics, then you lose out on the people who are genuinely interested in knowing and and understanding this BBI and what it's all about. So perhaps those people who are tasked with this mission just steer clear away from politics that way. And I saw our DP Ruto yesterday talking, and he said he was referring to that BBI, function that happened in Kakamega. And he said, "Did you watch them? Everything was just about, me, Mr. Ruto," he was saying. And so they turned it into a political gimmick. So that should stop. Let's just let that be just BBI and BBI period. And so... still on the front pages here on the Standard newspaper, no annual pay rise for university workers. So government and public university managers agree to an 8.8 billion Kenya shillings pay package, which means 32,000 employees will not get the much anticipated annual salary increment, prompting angry reaction from unions there. And that is a story that is on page 6 of the Standard newspaper. Yeah, and still on the front pages here, stop insulting me at BBI rallies. I hadn't even seen this. Ruto tells Jubilee ODM leaders. Now, Deputy President fights off claims he's opposed to reforms, challenges rivals to focus on national priorities instead of turning weekend rallies into conclaves for attacking him. So that story is on page 13 of the Standard newspaper. And then we look at, all right. Yeah, keep writing. I can see you writing. Keep writing, and we shall have those conversations. Anything you want us to talk about across Africa. I have some information. I may not have everything, but your contribution always enriches the show. So please feel free to write, and I will be going through some of your comments there, and we shall have that conversation. As I said, I'm just going through the news-making headlines here in Kenya, and usually we go through the three leading dailies here in Kenya, and I'm just through the first one, just the headlines. We don't go too much into the details, even as we continue to look at President Uhuru Kenyatta's Big Four agenda and so far his legacy. So we look at the Daily Nation, and on the front pages, of course, Mr. Bombastic, now long on promises and short on everything else. Nairobi Governor Mike Sonko has sunk Nairobi to its lowest. Food stalls sit on mounds of garbage next to flowing sewer and are constantly under investigation. City Hall is a den of crime where it's nearly impossible for residents to get building permits and many other services. Oh my goodness. And this is everything Mr. Sonko seemed to have been fighting. These are some of the things he seemed to have been fighting before he became the governor of this city. And he was criticizing his predecessor quite a lot while he was also the senator at the same time. You remember Mr. Evans Kidero, he must be sitting somewhere very pretty. Of course, he's not smiling too much because he also has some of his corruption cases pending and being heard in court as we speak. But Mr. Sonko, who was his senator, was very, very critical of Mr. Evans Kidero when Kidero was the governor, and he did so much to discredit a lot of things that Kidero was doing. And instead of working as a unit, he was always out there trying to look like the rescuer, taking water, I don't know where. When a building collapses in the city, he's there. And I used to wonder, he's part of the Nairobi leadership. That means if Mr. Kidero is not working, then he is also part of the people who are not working. So if the Nairobi, leadership office looks bad, he will also look bad. But he really managed to make sure that Evans Kidero is the one who looked very bad. And he was very critical in how Evans Kidero, ran this city. But now he became the governor, and Mr. Sonko has not known peace. I don't know if he's even enjoyed that office since he became the governor of Nairobi, because it has been an issue after issue and court battles. And now he had promised that he will end the cartel that sells water across Nairobi. There are estates which gets water like once a week or twice a week, which should not be happening. And you'll find that when you go to these estates, there are people there with clean water, selling clean water from the city. You wonder, where are they getting this water? So apparently that has been a business that is being run by the cartel. So you buy a jerry can with a very, at a very high cost, And so he said when he comes to power as the Nairobi governor, he'll make sure that he fights all these cartels. And then, apparently now it is even difficult to get some permits there from City Hall, for you to be cleared if you want to build or whatever you're looking for. And then Nairobi County stalls, the markets, the fresh produce markets that were clean and all of that. Now it has become amounts of garbage and things don't seem to be functioning. I remember when Evans Kidero was the governor, Sonko would take his Sonko rescue team and they will go to a particular market and they will clean up and they will do all these things. That was for sure, because now he became the governor and he realized, oh my goodness, things are a bit different over here. And now he has to be responsible and he cannot blame anybody else. And as we know right now, Mr. Sonko is facing very serious charges in the courts. A matter of fact, he was barred for even accessing his office. And so it has been very difficult. And there's a road I normally use in town. One of the streets in the CBD that is terrible. And I think is it last year that he must have brought some people there to do some, to just fill up the patches, the potholes. Right now it's terrible. So if we start experiencing serious rains, it's going to be very difficult. And so so this is how he's being judged now. The same things he acted very harshly and criticized his predecessor for. These are the same things that it has become very difficult for him to achieve. The potholes in Tom Mboya Street, the potholes in some streets in the CBD, like CBD Nairobi, we have some roads with potholes. That is unacceptable. Mr. Governor, that is unacceptable. And last year, I saw some people doing some works there. The potholes are back, so they did a very shoddy job. He gives tenders, I assume, to people who don't care about quality of work, because this is something that has become a cash cow. They want to come back and do it. So now the potholes are back, and if the long rains returns, then the city residents will suffer. So I hope that they can do something before the start of the long rains later on in the year. But so far, Mr. Bombastic, that is the Daily Nation headline, Mr. Bombastic. He's very flamboyant. He'll wear very expensive jewelry from Gucci, Louis Vuitton, and I think his favorite brand is Versace. I've seen him with the T-shirts, the curb, all of that. He's very flamboyant, and but now our governor is in trouble, and all of those things he used to accuse the former governor, Mr. Evans Kidero, for, and now he gets himself in trouble for that, even worse. And so there you go. I guess you don't understand where the shoes pinches until you really try it on, huh? Yes. So Mr. Bombastic there is in problem. And so still on the headlines there on the Daily Nation newspaper, happy 100th birthday, Sir Charles. That is a former Attorney General. He will be celebrating his 100th birthday on the 23rd. Oh my goodness, that is a whole century. On the 23rd, that is on Thursday, our former Attorney General. Oh my God, 100 years old. He's lived for a century. That is such a blessing. And this former AG, he's quite unique in so many other things. He is very British, first of all, and also he married, I think, at the age of 60. That was the first time he got married. So I don't know if that is the secret for the long life. I'm not saying anything, but you know what? Indeed, Thursday, On Thursday, we shall wish him a happy birthday. And of course, right now as we speak, he is in Uganda, in Mugahinga Gorilla National Park, as he waits to celebrate his 100th birthday there in Uganda. Our former Attorney General, Mr. Charles Jonjo, or he is called the Duke of Kabete Shai. The Duke of Kabete, because he's quite, he's quite British to the T, even his mannerisms. Anyway. So on the Star newspaper, the front page is Ruto isolated as BBI drive gathers steam. DP's allies want building bridges rallies banned as they are stoking tensions. Really? Okay. Page 4 and 5. Page 4 and 5 of the Star newspaper. Let me see. Why does our deputy president want these rallies banned? I think because they called his name too much and he did not like that. So Deputy President William Ruto is becoming increasingly isolated as allies of President Uhuru Kenyatta and opposition leader Raila Odinga fire up the building bridges crusade. Ruto is watching from the periphery as powerful forces around Uhuru and Raila launch aggressive BBI rallies that analysts suggest could undermine and worst annihilate his 2020 presidential ambitions. Now, for the next rally, they head to Mombasa. Of course, I talked about that. On Sunday, Ruto urged politicians campaigning for the BBI initiative to stop making him the issue in their rallies. So it continues. So it's a lot. I will not even get into it because I think we've talked about it. But there you go. And also food crisis looms after heavy rains. Okay, so now I think we can't win with nature. When it's too much, it's a problem. When we don't have it, it's also a problem. So there has been some too much rain, and so the food crisis looms because a lot of crops were destroyed from those rains. Ex-Nairobi Governor Kidero faces third corruption charge. As I said there, I hadn't even seen this. That is on page 6 of the Star newspaper. So our former governor faces corruption charges, and our now governor is still in court with corruption charges. So both of them are in court. Wow. Uhuru Ruto allies in Senate fight to control YT to impeachment. There you go. And then help me get my right breast back, pleads orphaned teenager. I don't know what that is. Oh, that's she has a tumor in one of her breasts. All right. So there you go. Those are what is making headlines in the leading Kenyan newspapers here in Kenya this morning. The Star newspaper, the Daily Nation, the Standard. And so we are done with that. As we started the show, I mentioned to you earlier that the UDC election petition is ongoing right now in Botswana. The opposition, of course, went to challenge the results of the election that saw Mokwetsi Masisi re-elected as the president of Botswana. I remember his predecessor, Ian Khama, also ditched the party last year in April to go and support the opposition, but they lost, and they said no, we have to go to court and challenge this election results. And so they are in court right now. In just a few moments, as I was waiting for us to go on air, I was just watching the live proceedings. So it is a court process that is ongoing, and of course I'll let you know the latest maybe tomorrow, because I believe by the time we are through with the show, we might not have the full details. But also, I'm Bakasi, Member of Parliament here in Kenya, Mr. Babu Owino, who was shot somebody, a DJ at a club on the neck. I think the guy was taken to the high dependence unit, but he's now in ICU. I don't know if he's recovered or he's better now. I'm not sure. But right now, he has been charged with attempted murder. And the case, as we speak, is ongoing in the court here in Nairobi. So now let us get to other news making headlines across Africa. And we'll start with Angola, where leaked documents reveal how Africa's richest woman made her fortune through exploiting her own country and corruption. Isabel dos Santos got access to lucrative deals involving land, oil, diamonds, and telecoms when her father was president of Angola, a southern African country rich in natural resources. The documents show how she and her husband were allowed to buy valuable state assets in a series of suspicious deals. Now, Ms. Dos Santos says the allegations against her are entirely false and that they are politically motivated and witch hunt by the Angolan government. And we go to Sudan, where Sudan Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok says he is confident in the country's military even after a rebellion this past week at the General Intelligence Services headquarters by soldiers associated with former President Omar al-Bashir. The incident led to the resignation of Sudan's intelligence chief Abu Bakr Mustafa Dambad as authorities launched an investigation into the mutiny. Mr. Hamdok is trying to unify a country that has been in conflict for most of the past 5 decades. The Prime Minister sought to assure the public of security following the attempted revolt. And we move to Libya, where on the eve of the international summit in Berlin to relaunch a peace process in Libya, supporters of Khalifa Haftar, the eastern Libyan commander, have hit hard. On Saturday morning, his forces blocked the country's main oil terminals in order to economically cripple the UN-backed government of the National Unity in Tripoli. And in a press release, the national oil company reported a halt of exports in the ports known as Oil Crescent. And still in Libya, and world leaders agreed on Sunday to respect an arms embargo and back off from interfering in Libya, where forces from two rival governments are fighting for power. 12 world leaders, among them top representatives of the EU, United Nations, African Union, and Arab League, held a one-day summit in Berlin. Participants agreed that the week-old truce in Libya needs to become a more durable ceasefire. The United Nations Security Council, Antonio Guterres, has said all sides need to put pressure on the warring parties in Libya. With different countries backing different sides in Libya, there has been a growing concern that Libya will become another Syria. And then we go to Cameroon, where 500 Cameroonians from all walks of life are waited at the symposium on Cameroon convened by the African Forum and scheduled to take place in Kenya come April this year. The information is contained in a release signed by the Executive Director of the African Forum, Dr. John Tasha. According to the release, through this symposium, the African Forum seeks to be informed on the ongoing challenges facing the country and see what extent it could lend its support on the peaceful resolution of those challenges. So there will be a symposium happening here in Kenya on Cameroonians, and so I'm assuming Amazonians will be part of this, at least, because this conflict has to do with what is happening in the Amazonia region there, in the Anglophone region in Cameroon. So still in Cameroon, and the United States Secretary of State in charge of African Affairs, Tibor Nagy, has disclosed that effective decentralization is the way out for peace to return to the crisis and hit northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon. In an exclusive interview with Radio France International last Friday morning, prior to his tour to Africa that began on Saturday, Tibor Nagy disclosed that the socio-political situation in Cameroon is giving him sleepless nights. And talking about the special status granted to Cameroon's two English-speaking regions, he stated that what the people in the two regions want is effective decentralization that will recognize their cultural identity and permit them to run their own activities. And we go to Comoros, where voters in Comoros casted their ballots in the first round of parliamentary elections boycotted by opposition parties yesterday. Most voting stations in the Indian Ocean's archipelago capital, Moroni, opened later than scheduled because of bad weather. Opposition parties said they would contest the 24 seats in Comoros National Assembly they will not contest. This is after failing to obtain guarantees of a transparent, free and democratic election. Okay, so President Azali Assoumani secured a second consecutive term in March 2019, but critics allege vote rigging, and witnesses said ballot boxes were stuffed. The latest scandal in a country blighted by instability and coups. And then we move to South Sudan, where, according to the main opposition party led by Dr. Riek Machar, the UN forces will be deployed in conflict-sensitive areas such as Juba, Nemule Highway, Yei River State, and within Juba. The proposal is to enable the parties from the government next month in the absence of the proper security agreements. Now, speaking to the press on Friday, a senior member of the SPLM-IO, Angelina Teny, said they are willing to compromise if the government accepts the deployment of the RPF as approved in 2016. And we go to the Democratic Republic of Congo, where police in the DRC prevented a march in Kinshasa on Friday. They kept a close watch on its instigator, opponent, and former presidential candidate Martin Fayulu. The latter denounced the massacres in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. The police escorted Fayulu's car on foot, taking him home and preventing him from walking with his supporters after a morning mass in the popular district of Njili. And we go to Zimbabwe, where the United Kingdom has not invited to the UK Africa Investment Summit getting underway. Has not invited Zimbabwe to the UK Africa Investment Summit getting underway today in London, dealing a major blow to President Emerson Mnangagwa, a bid to end the country's international isolation. The opposition MDC, however, said they has been invited to the UK summit, and which gets underway, of course, today on Tuesday. They arrived today and it will get underway on Tuesday. The party's Secretary for International Relations, Gladys Hashuao, told the Daily News on Sunday that the MDC will be represented by Elliot. And still on Zimbabwe, and the MDC said Zimbabwe had become a fascist state on Friday after over 100 police officers stormed the party's headquarters in central Harare, ostensibly to look at subversive materials. The police action came days after police blocked MDC leader Nelson Chamisa from delivering a speech in Bare, where he was due to deliver what his party described as Agenda 2020. He said this was shameless, pathetic, and patently unlawful, and Chamisa's deputy that is what Diabetes said on behalf of the MDC party. So Chamisa on Wednesday said he will now deliver his vision for Zimbabwe tomorrow, that is January 21st, come what may, and that he said in a strong message to President Emerson Mnangagwa's regime, which he says stopped him from delivering the speech on January the 15th. Oh my goodness, I'm already rushing this year. We are still in January, and my head is in July. All right, and still in Zimbabwe, and Vice President Constantino Chiwenga has blinked fast in his divorce battle with his estranged wife, Mary Mubaiwa. Now, after it was revealed on Friday that he's seeking an out-of-court settlement, in a case brought by the former model after she was barred from her matrimonial home in Borodale. Okay, so now Mubaiwa's lawyer, advocate Taona Nyamakura, says the parties are yet to reach an agreement, adding that they fail, the case will be argued tomorrow. She, however, could not return to her home after Chiwenga deployed soldiers who barred her from entering the premise, and he is also refused. And Chiwenga has also refused to release their 3 young children in Mubaiwa's custody. Aggrieved by the move, Mubaiwa then rushed to the High Court with an urgent chamber application seeking to be allowed to access her home. Now she wants to access her personal items and properties within the home, including clothes, vehicles, following her release from prison. Now, Chiwenga, who filed for divorce from Mubaiwa last year, has described his estranged wife as a witch and a drug addict, and he's saying that marrying his wife was the worst mistakes, and all this information is contained in the court papers. Okay, now let's just go swiftly to Nigeria. Of course, we shall talk about that. To Nigeria, and the chairman of the Southwest Governors Forum and Ondo State Governor, Mr. Rotimi Akeredolu, on Sunday said that the regional security outfit Operation Omotekun was not targeted at any non-Yoruba ethnic group. Akeredolu, who stated this in a statement in Akure by the State Commissioner for Information and Orientation, Mr. Donald Ojogo, said this course on Operation Omotekun should not be given an ethnic coloration. Now, the Southwest governors, traditional rulers, and other prominent indigenous had in June last year decided to set up Operation Omotekun as a result of serial killings and kidnappings in the zone. So if you are a Biafran and you're watching and you are familiar with this story, please let me know what is really happening there, and if you support this Operation Omotekun, because Omotekun, because apparently it was targeting a particular, ethnic group there in Nigeria. So let me know. And we end with some news from Biafra, and the indigenous people of Biafra has said that reported attendance of its leader Nnamdi Kanu and at his parents' burial in February is mere speculation. Kanu, who was on bail while facing an alleged treasonable offense, disappeared from the country in a controversial circumstance, and shortly after his family house in Isiama Afara Oku in Abia State was attacked by the Nigerian army in 2017. Now, the IPOB leader lost his father, Eze Israel Kanu, and his mother, Egwoze Sali Kanu, in quick succession last year. Kanu's father was the traditional ruler of Isamia Afara Oku community near Umuahia, the Abia State capital, till his death. Now, according to a statement by the IPOB Media and Publicity Secretary Emma Powerful, Kanu's parents will be interred on February 14th, on Valentine's Day. And I think at the beginning of this year, I had not received any information on what really happened, because I know his parents died. Mr. Nnamdi Kanu's parents died. I think one died, and then the other one followed shortly. They did not die too far apart. And earlier this month, well, it's still early, but I was asking of viewers if they know, the latest from this, if at all the parents were buried. So apparently they have not been buried. And, Mr. Nnamdi Kanu had wanted to come and bury his parents. That must be the hardest thing. Can you imagine that you can't bury, both your parents are dead, and you're not able to go there and bury them? That must be the hardest thing. And so now, there were some speculations that were carried out in one of the dailies there in Nigeria that has suggested that Mr. Kanu will actually try to come back to Nigeria and bury his parents. But now, through the spokesperson of IPOB, Mr. Emma Powerful, came out, who also is a presenter in Radio Biafra, if I'm not wrong, okay? And so he came out and said, no, there are no such plans, because, the last time after the death of his mother, because his mother is the one who died first, and Mr. Kanu really wanted to come back to Nigeria and bury his mother, and the police said, okay, you come, but we shall be waiting for you at the airport because we have a warrant of arrest against you that was issued. And this warrant of arrest was issued in 2017 before Mr. Nnamdi escaped from Nigeria, later on finding his way to Israel and Europe and all of that. So now, the father then died a few weeks from that. So both of them have not been buried. And so they will be buried on the 14th of February. That is next month, less than a month from now. And Mr. Kanu cannot come back to Nigeria to, bury his parents. I cannot even begin to imagine, because Kanu, by the time he was disappearing from Nigeria, he was on bail and he was facing treasonable offense charges. And of course, it is said that the Nigerian army attacked his home, and it is at that point that he disappeared. Through some of his supporters that were around his home at that time, he disappeared. He was able to disappear from the back door. I read some place where he was giving his account of how things happened that day that led for him leaving Nigeria. And so, he has disappeared from the country since then. And so now, and then during that event, I think a lot of the IPOB, a lot of his supporters were murdered. A lot of Biafrans were murdered that day who were at his home there in Abia State. So now it must be very difficult. And of course, Kanu's father was the traditional ruler of Isiama Afara, Oku community near Umuahia, the Abia State capital. That is the Abia State capital till his death. So he is a person of a certain stature in the society. So he is of a certain cultural importance as a head of that community. So his death, and now the subsequent lack of his son, who is very instrumental in the IPOB, in the war, in the secession, must be very, very difficult. And so I think it must have been very hard for this community. And I remember the leaders visiting their family there. I think his younger brother is still in Nigeria there. And so when the elders, after his father died, and they visited their homes, and they said, you know what, the dream of having a free Biafra is still on course, and that is something that they shall be looking at. But I don't know. This is very difficult. And as I was reading the other news there earlier about this Operation Omotekun, this was very controversial last year. And I remember we had a conversation about it here, I think at night, at one of our shows in the evening, and we were talking about this. And how some ethnic tribes there in Nigeria feel they're being targeted unfairly by the government. And so now the chairman of the Southwest Governors Forum and Ondo State, of course, Governor Mr. Rotimi Akeredolu, has come out and said that the operation is not targeting any non-Yoruba ethnic groups, because Biafrans had come out and said, you know what, this is an operation that is targeting certain certain communities over there. And so this governor is coming out and saying, no, this operation was advised by the rise of insecurity in these states, in the Southwest states. And so they decided, you know what, let's create this operation to make sure that security is beefed up around these areas in Nigeria. But I think I did not bring that news with me today, but a lot of people were killed between Friday and Saturday by Boko Haram in Nigeria. Every single day, there are deaths being reported. Forgetting Burkina Faso, forgetting Niger, forgetting Mali, forget the deaths that are happening in other places. And also in Cameroon, the part that they share the border with Cameroon also has there's an increased number of people who are dying from Boko Haram related attacks. So every single day, people are dying in Nigeria from Boko Haram attacks. And even today, there was some news about an attack that happened. Attacks in Nigeria and also attacks in Somalia. Somalia has now come back to there are attacks happening every single day in Somalia. Matter of fact, one happened yesterday. A bomb went off yesterday, killing, I think, 4 people or so. And in Nigeria as well, over Friday and Saturday, a lot of people died. And should I go there, I'll find other news about other, attacks that is as a result of Boko Haram. So while these Southwest governors, are forming this, Operation Omotekun, to try to beef up security in that part of Nigeria, I don't know what is happening in the rest of Nigeria, and what should other Nigerians do who are greatly affected, by the attacks by Boko Haram. What is the government doing? What is the strategy? Because I've seen after yesterday, I don't know why I didn't put that news here, but we were watching Kenya here, after the attack by, the United States, after killing that commander, Iranian commander, we saw attacks happening there in the northern part of Kenya, that borders Somalia. And so yesterday we were watching in the news where police thwarted over 2, potential attacks that are going to claim a lot of lives of Kenyans. So we saw our security agents, working on strategies and increasing their surveillance. And of course, one that was meant to be happening in another restaurant, another public recreational place here along Kiambu Road, just not too far from Nairobi. It is the owners of that premise that saw some people who came in and they looked like they were doing a surveillance of some sort. So they informed the police, who came in swiftly, and true to it, they found they had grenades, they had all of these things that the Al-Shabaab normally uses to attack and to cause a lot of distraction. So now we've seen that. And we've seen another one they thwarted that was supposed to be happening in Lamu. So the security agents in Kenya are on alert, are on alert. So I'm just, the disconnect, in Nigeria with the military and the security intelligence and all of that is what I don't understand. Is it incompetence? I don't know what is happening with the security agencies in Nigeria that has allowed for Boko Haram to thrive as it has thrived. That has allowed, so this will actually play into the, some of the rumors and some of the allegations that has been made that actually President Muhammadu Buhari could, is the one that is permitting the laxity is actually intentional, so that Boko Haram could flourish the way they're flourishing. Because I'm thinking, come on now, an insurgent group has taken over one side of the country. People are being kidnapped, girls are being kidnapped from schools, and they're kept for a very, like, how do you keep over 200 people at a place and nobody notices, nobody talks about it? Boko Haram is running its mark in Nigeria and unfortunately in also other African countries. And I've never understood the disconnect in the intelligence, the security officers in Nigeria are receiving and what is really on the ground. What is the disconnect? Why are they not doing something? So this Operation Omotekun, apparently to beef up security in the southwest region of Nigeria. I don't know if you come from that area. That would also be in Biafra, yes. And last week, I think we was sitting here speaking about one of the leaders, I can't remember who, but he says he was an Air Force pilot during that time, Biafra, the war in Biafra that started in 1957 and ended in 1960. So this year, last week, I think on the 15th of January, marked 50 years after the end of the first war in Biafra there, the Biafra War, 50 years ago. The end of it, the anniversary was last week on the 15th. And he said that the Igbos have turned the Biafra War to be an Igbo thing, and he said this was a collective, aspiration to a lot of people in the south and in the eastern part of Nigeria. And we did not have a lot of time to talk about this, but if you're watching me, what is really happening there? Has the Igbos, hijacked the whole process of finding a secession, of getting a referendum that will finally allow Biafra to be its own country? Has the Igbos, hijacked the whole process as one of these, former active member of the Biafrans, the people who are fighting for the secession of Biafra land, said that this is not an Igbo affair. It is for the whole of everybody else it was a collective responsibility, a collective effort, but not just the Igbos, but also other communities around the southern area and the eastern area of Nigeria. So he said that the Igbos should stop making this an Igbo affair. That story is online. But if you're watching me this morning, let me know what you make of it. So that is just interesting times there in Nigeria. But the disconnect between the security officials in Nigeria and what is really on the ground and what is really happening there and the attacks from Boko Haram, it's really disheartening. And somebody needs to hold the government of Muhammadu Buhari accountable. Why are Nigerians not in the streets? Why are Nigerians not in the streets protesting against the rise of insecurities? Why are the people very comfortable? That is something that they should demand. Security is a basic right that is guaranteed. Your security as a citizen of a country is guaranteed. And sometimes some things are out of hand and the government can't do much about it. But at least they should be showing some effort. They should be showing that they care, that the government of Muhammadu Buhari cares about the citizens there in Nigeria, and so goes ahead and tries to make sure that it does whatever it takes to make sure the citizens there are safe from terror that is being meted upon them by Boko Haram. But what do we see? A very interesting times there in Nigeria. So now let's look at Zimbabwe. I know we shall come back and talk about South Sudan in a bit, but just let's look at Zimbabwe. And I don't know which one we start with. So Vice President Constantino Chiwenga has been the first person. Of course, he took the wife to court. We talked about this, I think, towards the end of last year, because apparently the wife tried to poison him. Remember, he was in hospital since April last year, receiving a treatment in China. Yes, the people who actually go to China for treatment, not for business ventures, but for treatment. And the reason why he went to China is because, of course, he was one of the people who has been sanctioned. So he cannot go to Europe or the US, as a lot of our politicians do when they're seeking for medical attention. They normally go out of the country. So they are completely out of touch with our poor, facilities here in the country. Or they know that is why they go out, but they never do much to change the situation. So anyway, Mr. Chiwenga had gone out, for treatment, and then he says the wife had conspired and really wanted to murder him during that time he was sick, and the wife had gone and forged his signature on the marriage certificate, and they had separated or divorced. I don't know what was happening. They had separated, but now Chiwenga, filed for an official divorce sometimes back last year, I think after he came back from the treatment in China. And so, and I was just wondering, because the children were never mentioned. Even now in this story, I hear they have 3 young children. That means they require or need or must be around their mom. But according to the court papers, Mr. Chiwenga is alleging that his wife is a witch, a drug addict. And marrying her was the worst mistake he's ever made. So remember, Mary, who is a former wife to Chiwenga, is an ex-model. She used to model. Yes, she's pretty like that. So it's very interesting, because at the end of the day now, she has been barred from accessing her kids who are very young. And even when I think there's a rebuttal that Mary also filed that did not paint the vice president in very good light. But you see, when things like this play in public, out in the open, and you have children, they might be very young right now, but later on, these are not things they want to read about their mom. These are not things they want to read about their father. And so this is something that perhaps should have been done out of court. But I am happy that the Vice President, Mr. Constantino Chiwenga, that is of Zimbabwe, has seen the light, and he's saying that, now he's willing to settle this matter out of court. That is very good. And it should have been like that from the start. Or maybe he wanted to teach her a lesson and now she's learned it. So he made sure he went to jail for a couple of days. The mother to your children. I understand whatever she was trying to do was not right. Trying to forge someone's signature, it's not right. To the marriage certificate, that is criminal. And, and somewhere here he's saying she's a witch and also a drug addict. These are very strong accusations. And somebody being a drug addict, and this was your wife, I don't think this is a time to throw her out, because drug addiction, that is an illness that requires treatment. So perhaps he should have sought treatment for her, not divorce her in that manner, or not even expose it in that manner. Drug addiction is not something very light. That is an illness. And the reason why a lot of people even shy away from even admitting the drug addicts or alcoholism is because of the stigma, that comes with it, like this one now. And the sooner we realize and stop, this stigmatization of some of these things, and we can allow people to actually go out and seek out for the help that they require. So that is the latest there from Vice President Constantino Chiwenga's, with his estranged wife, Mary Mobaiwa. So also now, still in Zimbabwe, and Chuk Sandy, you're saying, my sister, if you protest, the government will kill us like Boko Haram do. So you're living in the country and you're living in fear. You cannot express yourself. Because I know, as here in Kenya, if even killings are happening in a certain village or a certain way, we've seen residents taking out to the streets, and we shall make noise until the government hears us. But also what I love about this country, of course, there are a lot of things that are happening that are not nice. Let's just have that very clear. But the swift way in which the government comes in and strategizes and tries to take care of the problem. Like as I said over the weekend, the security officials in this country thwarted 2 very potential, attacks that would have killed a lot of innocent Kenyans. They were able to get hold of that, But because the government of Kenya is serious about getting rid of Al-Shabaab and other militias in this country. There's another one that started in the coastal city of Kenya, and they were trying to say that part of Kenya is not Kenya, so now they want I don't know what word, and it was, it was a militant group. The government of Kenya, through our former president Mwai Kibaki, came very hard, and all those radicalized clerics from the coastal Kenya, I don't even know if any of them is alive today. The government came very hard and sent a very strong message, and that nonsense stopped. So just here and there, they try to make a few attacks, but not at the magnitude in which it was happening. But the government, the security agencies is always looking for intelligence, is always on them. Otherwise, it would have been a different story. But in Nigeria, I don't know. Best case, thank God you're saying I love watching and listening to your news. God Africa, my father. God bless Africa, my father home. Thank you so much. Yes. Chol Makor, you're saying I think AU is sleeping. AU is always asleep because AU, by now, AU should have convened a meeting, a very urgent meeting to deal with Boko Haram. I tell you, when you go to AU files, you try to look through the websites, I've not seen where they've sat down, they have convened a meeting to look at Boko Haram. Say, today, this is something that is posing a lot of insecurity in this continent. People are dying, innocent people dying in Nigeria and in Burkina Faso and in Niger and also in Mali, and these are the countries that are being affected by this. They have not convened an urgent meeting to deal with this matter. I don't know if they're waiting for what happened in Germany, where Angela Merkel convened that meeting to try to find solutions for what is happening in Libya. So AU has failed, and now AU was also present there in Libya. What a shame. What a shame that AU is just a participant. It's not even spearheading, finding a solution in Libya. As an African, it's quite disheartening. That makes me very mad. AU is the one that is supposed to be spearheading the talks to find peace, to find stability in Libya and in other African countries that are restive and in other, countries that are marred with civil war. And these are the insecurities that are of very high magnitude. And AU is asleep. Chor Makor, you're right. AU is in a slumber and is in a very deep slumber. Abraham Wangila Wafula, you're saying, what are the demands of Boko Haram? Of course, Boko Haram does not want Western education. Boko Haram wants a Sharia-led country. That is one of because Boko Haram loosely translates to the Western education, and they are against that. it's an ideological war, which is very difficult to fight, because this is they are embedded in their minds, and of course it's a jihadist war. So then they have nothing to lose, and so these are just some of the demands they have, that some parts of Nigeria, this education, Western education, should be stopped. And of course, these ideologies, they borrow from the, some of it from Saudi Arabia. And it's a whole lot, but it's an ideological war that is happening there with Boko Haram. All right, so they don't have anything specific. But I think after the murder, after the dying of their founder, they said, you know what, from today on, we are rising against Christians in Nigeria. So initially that was, but when you see, they kill even the Muslims themselves, but their main target is the Christians, or as they call Christians, kafir. So that is it. Wangila Wafula, thank you. So anyway, let's look at South Sudan. And now Riek Machar has come out and said for him to come back in South Sudan, for him to sign that peace deal that will lead to, forming a unity government. The deadline is on the 22nd of February of next month. He said one of his topmost demands, and this has been an issue that he's been taking with President Salva Kiir until his security is guaranteed. That has been an issue. But last week on Tuesday, he visited Juba, and they've been having talks over. The talks have been being mediated by a section of leaders across the country, and was being spearheaded by South Africa's vice president, together with Kenya's special envoy of South Sudan there, Mr. Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, and also Uganda had a special envoy there to help in these talks, and also other players. So now there has been a contention about the number of states. As you know, right now, South Sudan has 32 states. Mr. Salva Kiir, the president, said, 32 states is not enough. A matter of fact, he does not mind increasing the states to 55 states. That is in South Sudan, 55 states. Even the whole United States of Africa has 50 states. South Sudan president wants 55 states. And Mr. Riek Machar had said, no, perhaps we should go back to the 10 initial states that we inherited, from the colonialist. So the 10 states, or even if you have to add, then just a few, because South Sudan does not require a lot of states. And so there was a stalemate over the number of states. So now, after last week's meeting, and of course the leaders, the mediators there, I think, gave a statement on Friday, and they said, the number of states, it has not been solved, but it will not hold back these leaders from signing this peace deal. This peace deal shall continue, and then the states matter will be solved after, after they've come together, and Riek Machar is in Juba, and they're now working into finding solution. And also yesterday, as we are having this conversation here, because we happened to talk about the same thing, one of our viewer, I think from South Sudan, who lives abroad now, said that, peace is what is important for South Sudan. Peace, not states. Peace is what is important. Because what use are states when you don't even have the citizens there? When your citizens are somewhere in refugee camps and across the world, what use is 10 states, 1 state, 55? What use is that when you don't have a people that will sit and enjoy whatever that comes with that? So he said peace is what is paramount in South Sudan, and that has been something that we've been doing here. And Abraham, you're saying, why is Salva Kiir insisting on having many states? I think from the information that we've been getting is that he's just doing it for the sake of, not because he has a particular reason as to why he would prefer so many states. Of course, that will be easier for him to really to micromanage when he has all these people and representatives and governors in all over these many states. That will be easier for him to micromanage, the states, and also get information, intelligence, and all of that. When you have so many people across, who represent your interests across the whole country, I think that will be one thing. That could be one of the reasons why. But also one of the reasons why that really emerged from these talks, why Mr. Salva Kiir could not agree into having less states that his opponent wanted, the opposition leader Riek Machar, is because the people who were advising him, the hardliners who always cause troubles, like we've seen not just in South Sudan but also here in Kenya. You know those hardliners. And what those headliners would have been involved in the talks between President Kenyatta and NASA leader Raila Odinga. That handshake would never have happened if they had consulted, their peers and their political, affiliations. That would never have happened, because we know in Kenya we have serious headliners when it comes to some of these negotiations. So now, anyway. So Mr. President Salva Kiir apparently was advised by his hardliners that should he agree to lesser states, less than 32 that is currently there, then that will mean that he's coming down and he's agreeing to the demands of Riek Machar, and he did not want to look weak, as in he's agreeing with the Riek Machar. And of course, Riek Machar, I think he already knows that President Salva Kiir will not agree to less states, and he was saying, you know what, I have no problem, let's just keep the 10. If we have to increase the number of states, just a little bit. So it was a back and forth. So now there was Riek Machar's side, there was Salva Kiir's side, and also there was another side that represented the other opposition, and so they agreed. So the mediators, as I said, they're led by South Africa's Vice President, Mr. Madubo or Maduko? If I've mispronounced his name. They said, okay, fine, so this is how many you want. So they all gave the number of states they wanted, and then the states were divided. Was it by 3, the number of, the sides that were negotiating? And the average was found to be 21. So they said, let's have 21 states. And President Salva Kiir's side said no, because should he have agreed with the 21, then he would have looked weak. So his hardliner said, no, you cannot agree. You cannot agree about 21. So the reason why they're actually arguing about the states has really nothing to do with benefiting the people of South Sudan. It's just an ego thing. And it has been the ego that has brought South Sudan to where it is today. Because as much as we'll sit here and want peace for this country, as much as we'll sit here and support the peace process and we pray for them, and the Pope kisses their feet and all these things, and all this goodwill from the rest of the world, until these two leaders in South Sudan and other stakeholders really decide peace is what we want for our country, then all these other efforts will be futile. It has to come from them. So there has been a lot of ego, that has laced this peace process. And when you look at even the old items that, are contained, the matters, the agenda that is supposed to be discussed, when you look at it very keenly, has nothing really to do with the people of South Sudan. Not much, nada. Matter of fact, after they finished, they did not even finish, because they did not agree on the number of states. But sometimes last year, one of the government ministers came out and said, you know what, the president side, actually the government does not mind having a referendum to decide on this matter. Mark you, this is a country that has its citizens somewhere, even in the country, over 2 million refugees in South Sudan at the borders. So many of them in Kenya, a lot of them in Uganda, a lot of them across the world who have been forced to flee and go look for other safe havens across the world. So you are planning to have a referendum. Who is going to vote in this referendum? So the government of South Sudan has complete misplaced priorities, if you asked me. They don't even know what is important. I don't even think they care to ask the people of South Sudan and engage really with the people who have been hurting, with the people who, they have security. They can instigate the war. They will come and then they will be secured. Mr. Riek Machar is somewhere very safe in Khartoum. President Salva Kiir has protection, And if it will mean you want to come and protect him, they will do that for the sake of this peace process. So they've been holding this country at ransom. So I think that until these leaders decide that we want peace in South Sudan themselves, then it's still going to be a daunting task. We can bring all the mediators we know in the world. they'll come. And last year I was very optimistic about the 12th of November deadline, and then it did not happen because they had to iron out some of these issues, and so I was a bit So now I'm cautiously optimistic. Let me just put it like that, because let's just wait and see. But they've come out and said, you know what, these boundaries matter, these states matter. It's something that we don't have to solve now. We can solve it later. So I'm hoping that that is what will happen. Let me see. So, Mr. Abraham Wangila Wafula, I hope I have answered your question. Chol Makor, you're saying we are independent, democratic, Christian Republic of South Sudan. Done. Chol Makor, I'm sure there are some other South Sudanese who are from other religions. So we have to be tolerant. In Kenya, we have all sorts of religion. I don't even care what you believe. As long as you don't step on my right, we are fine. You can worship under the tree. You can worship. I don't care. If that is your belief, that's fine. I will respect it. Just respect my space, because you have to learn to be tolerant, Mr. Chol Makor. If you say you're just a Christian Republic of South Sudan, I'm sure there's some Muslims there. I'm sure there are other religions there. So if it's headlined like that, then we have to learn to be tolerant. We have to learn to be tolerant. Tolerance is good. And as Christians, I think our faith is based on that. Love everybody, even when you don't agree with them, you just love on them. I think we should. And you're also saying Riek Machar is just a seller of South Sudan's sovereignty and her African citizens. Oh, okay. So thank you so much. So now he is saying that he's now the latest demand that he made. He said the United Nations forces should be deployed in conflict-sensitive areas such as Juba, Nimule Highway, Yei River State, and within Juba. So this is what he said. That for him to come and sign this unity government accord, then the United Nations forces, and I think this is something that we've talked about here, so that we can have the UN soldiers to act as buffer between the two sides. But if we are to have a unity government, then it will be required that these opposing sides, everybody comes to the table. These soldiers are unified. They get proper military training. They get proper police training. They get proper disciplined forces training. And I think that could be made possible through the United Nations, the United States. They're very good in training soldiers and military personnel across the world, and they do that all the time. It is required, proper disciplinary forces training. It is required in South Sudan, so that militant mentality can be polished and gotten rid of. And you realize that when you are a military officer, you're serving the country. You have a duty to protect lives in the country and not be part of the people who are perpetrating this against your own citizens, because that is what has been happening. And a lot of reports have been showing some soldiers, not all of them, but some, they're the ones who participate in raping the women, in maiming people there. So there needs to be a proper training, so that mindset, that militant mindset, needs to be reset again, so that they're able to act accordingly with a disciplined force like they do elsewhere across the world. All right, and so fine, like a UN force buffer. That's important, but slowly they need to learn to come together. They need to learn to trust each other, because South Sudan requires a unity, and a unity will not just be like a Salva Kiir and Riek Machar. They shook hands and now it's okay. No, we need all of these fractions to come together, and the military unit in our country is very important. We need them to be speaking in one voice. We need them to be having the same vision. We need them to be protecting the same interest, and that is the country and the people of South Sudan first. So we need them unified. I know it's a tall order, because there's been years of suspicion. There's been years of being disenfranchised. There's been years of distrust and mistrust between them. So it's going to take a while, but I think that is also a process that I'm sure they're planning, and it should be done so that Okay, good. So let me just read. Abraham, you're asking, did Khartoum solve her crisis? I think so far, so good. Are you talking about the mutiny that happened last week, Mr. Abraham Wangila? Because I think they solved it. And the head of, I think I had a news here about it. Of course, the head of intelligence there, resigned. So now the Sudan Prime Minister Hamdok says he is confident in the country's military, even after rebellion this past week at the General Intelligence Service headquarters by soldiers associated to former leader Omar al-Bashir. So they wanted to get rid of that unit, and I think the soldiers were not very happy. I think with the pay they were going to be given or something like that, or they were just not very happy in the manner in which they were being treated after the ousting of former President Omar al-Bashir. So they are disgruntled. So that is, and some other reasons is why they staged this mutiny. But that is the latest. I don't know if there's any other issue there you'd want me to expound on Sudan, because so far I think we've not had much problems. Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok seems to be working very well with the military side. Remember, they have 3-year transition period, and right now they're working on the new constitution. Sudan's constitution was suspended in November. Yeah, last year. Was it in November last year? No, not before November. After the coup, just shortly after the coup. No, before the coup. In April, sorry. I'm missing my dates. But yeah, the constitution was suspended last year. All right, so now they're working on a new constitution. And during that time, they were not agreeing. Remember, during the talks and during the mediations that forced the Ethiopian Prime Minister, Mr. Abiy Ahmed, to come and spearhead some of this between the protest side and the army. Before they chose, the protest side chose one person who would lead them, and finally settling for Mr. Abdallah Hamdok. There are contentious issues, and one of them was the formulation of the new constitution because Mr. Omar al-Bashir strongly wanted it tied to the Sharia law. But the protesters, as much as majority of them are Muslims, are saying, no, we need something liberal. We need, a constitution that was liberal. So we do not want the Sharia law-based constitution. So that became a matter of contention because the army was in support of the Sharia law-based constitution, but the protest side was saying, no, we've had enough of that during the reign of President Omar al-Bashir. We are not interested. So it's a new Sudan, it's a new day, and we want a new constitution. So right now they're working on it. All right. So there you go, unless there's anything else you'd like for me to talk about in the Sudan crisis, but in the Khartoum crisis. But I don't think there is a crisis there per se, because, the soldiers who tried that mutiny, they went and made sure that, the airport was closed, but hours later it was opened. All right. So you're answering Kual Mangar. I don't know. You're responding. Okay, IGAD nations give South Sudan freedom, but happened now. 2015 peace deal was signed in Nyayo Stadium, Nairobi. Why is IGAD quiet? So you're saying South Sudan, IGAD nations, especially Kenya. I'll just speak for Kenya because I know I was perhaps a bit young, but I'd watch and see, and I knew the role that Kenya played. That led to South Sudan becoming a nation independent, that finally led to it becoming a nation in 2011 or so. All right. So Kenya was very pivotal, during that time. And of course, the US during that time, I think they stopped in 2015. And the peace deal was signed, of course, in the Nyayo National. You're saying in 2015, the peace deal was signed in Nyayo National Stadium, yeah? And why is IGAD quiet? Remember, IGAD has been accused, and Kenya has been accused in particular, and Ethiopia and Uganda, for one, undermining the peace process. I don't understand why, but they're saying there are few people who are South Sudanese and are really working to undermine the peace process. But when they come to Kenya gives them a board. Like they have houses here, they can travel, they're allowed to just, so there's another report that was presented to the United Nations sometimes back last year that really mentioned Kenya, Ethiopia, Uganda, and other countries that are playing towards allowing, this was tantamount to undermining the peace process in South Sudan, all right? So they're delaying, these activities are delaying the peace process in South Sudan. And I took issues with that. The reason why, the matters, two main matters that were contentious, that made Riek Machar refuse to come back to Juba to sign this at the deadline that was on 12th of November, had nothing to do with Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia, or any other country. He said he needed his security to be guaranteed. Second, he needed the state matter to be resolved. Those two were the major contentious issues that had nothing to do with any other country. Those were internal matters there in South Sudan. So maybe in the larger picture, perhaps, I don't know, some of these fellas who are allowed to come in and out of Kenya and other countries are contributing to the insecurity. But Riek Machar wanted to be guaranteed that once he's there, it will not turn to be the 2016, what happened in 2016, remember, when he almost died when he came to Juba? You know, so that situation there had nothing to do with these other countries. So I took issues with that. Why are they saying this? Yeah, because that is something that is internal, that requires South Sudanese themselves to deal with, the boundaries, the states, you know, and also the security. President has to come out very strongly and say, Machar, come back. I guarantee you with my life that your life is safe. Well, that's perhaps too strong, but yeah, he needs to guarantee this person, Riek Machar, his security, because he's been using this, and judging from what happened previous year, you know, in 2016, he's afraid, and I would be afraid myself, you know, if you know the events that took place there at State House, Juba 1. All right. Let me see what you're saying. Kalistas Lumula, you're saying tolerance is the key. Ignorance, pride, and arrogance is what is ailing South Sudan. The Pope kissed their feet, but they can't interpret the meaning of that. It is humility, folks. Humility. Leadership is about being humble to serve. Kalistas Lumula, thank you so much. You just captured my mind, except you've done it so well. I don't even need to add anything there. Humility. Because ego and humility cannot coexist. You either are egocentric, as the leaders of South Sudan are, very self-centered, very selfish. That is how I look at them. Or you're humble and you realize, I'm here to serve these people. What will my people want me to do? What is the decision they would want me to make? What exactly do they even want? Because all this time, all these negotiations, all these points of references, all of these things, all the agenda has been about what does Machar want, what does President Salva Kiir want, and now Thomas Cirillo, they said they've allowed them to come back, and also Mr. Malong, they're back into the fold, and they're trying to form this wonderful unity government. But it has been about these stakeholders. It has never been about the people of South Sudan. And I'm usually upset, you know, when I look at, you know, what is happening, and the people who have died, and the people who continue to be affected, and the people who are still living in camps because they cannot go back to their homes. It's not safe. I get very upset. And then these leaders who are supposed to be finding solutions to this, they're just there, you know, massaging their egos and, you know, playing power games, which has nothing to do with the benefit of their people. So Mr. Kalistas Lumula, is it a Mr. or a Kalistas, I'm assuming? You know what, you just captured my mind, except you did it very, very beautifully. Thank you so much. And tolerance is the key, agreed. Kuol Mangar there, I think you're correcting something there. Chol Makor said, Chol Makor is saying peace was shifted to Addis Ababa, and that's how South Sudan drowned. Why? Because you don't trust Ethiopia? Con Gak, you're saying, I hide what the South Sudan leaders... I think you meant saying you hate, because maybe that was a typo. What South Sudan leaders do should reach compromise and fix the issue and states quickly. And Abraham Ongila of Law is saying, Kenya is indeed undermining the peace process in South Sudan. Some influential leaders in Kenya are business partners to corrupt generals in South Sudan. Yes, also that was found to be true in the report. Matter of fact, they mentioned Gideon Moi, you know, the one who is now is receiving support from the rest of the Senate to take over from Senator Kipchumba Murkomen, and the son of the former president, Daniel Arap Moi, who was very instrumental in leading the peace process in South Sudan, and that later on, resulted to South Sudan being a country. Our former president, the second president of this republic, Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi, who served us for 24 years, and we said enough is enough, go get some rest. We need a new person, and that became Mwai Kibaki. So he's been resting very well, and we respect him, and we're fine. All right, so his son now was mentioned extensively by the Century report that was carried out by Mr. Clooney and Pendergast about what is happening in South Sudan and the people who are benefiting from this chaos. Matter of fact, even President Salva Kiir himself was said to be benefiting with the chaotic situation in South Sudan. All right, he's been a beneficiary. So if you were to ask him, then he's okay maintaining the status quo because he gets to benefit a lot. And they mentioned other key figures there. So Kenya, where it was at fault, is it allowed these people and some of this wealth. Man, when you meet these South Sudanese leaders across some of these wonderful hotels here in Nairobi, you will not believe it. And they live large. If you see their homes and the cars they drive, they live large. So you know what? I would agree with you on that. So by Kenya allowing these people to just, come and perhaps whatever has been stolen there, they come here and they buy houses and all of that, I think that undermines. But, Abraham, this is where I had a problem with. This is what I took issues with from that report that was presented to the United Nations last year. Just a few days before they announced the peace, it will not happen on the 12th of November. They said, Kenya, after they mentioned Kenya, but whatever that really made these leaders not to sign this deal, in that instance, that deadline had nothing to do with the country, had nothing to do with Uganda, had nothing to do with Kenya. It had everything to do with the security guarantee of Mr. Riek Machar, which President Salva Kiir could not strongly come out and say, you know what, yes, I guarantee you this. And also, this matter that they've been dragging forever, the number of states. Those are the two contentious issues that made sure that the deadline for 12th November was not met. So that is the only part I had a problem with. Kenya literally had nothing to do with the issues that contributed to the failure of the 12th of November deadline. But in a bigger scheme of things, in some ways, I think they should fix that. All right. So thank you very much. And okay, so that is on South Sudan. So now, of course, leaked documents reveal how Africa's richest woman made her fortune through exploiting her own country and corruption. Isabel dos Santos got access to lucrative deals, including land, oil, diamonds, and telecoms when her father was president of Angola, a Southern African country rich in natural resources. I was just watching this story, I think earlier on Al Jazeera, not in full details, before I left my house in the morning. And they're talking about this and how she really benefited. And it's an expose, I think. I don't know when this will be played, but they just played a sneak bit of it, and there's a lot of supporting documents to show how much she this wealth she amassed, how much she exploited her position as the first child of Angola. Of course, her father, as coming from the first family of Angola, her father was in power in Angola for 38 years. Yes, Isabella dos Santos, she's the richest woman in Africa. Yeah? All right, I don't want to accuse her of anything because Forbes places her at $2.2 billion reach. So let's see. And of course, Angola has ordered a seizure of a lot of her assets. She's not in the country right now. I think she's in the UK or something like that. And so her and her husband and her half-brother, they have been facing a lot of, some of their assets have been freezed, and the government is demanding that they return some money there. The richest woman in Africa. I hope she does not say she's self-made. I hope she doesn't say that, but there are a lot of documents supporting that. Okay, so leader in South Sudan should put their citizen interest first. Whatever happens, they do not suffer much, but rather the citizens. Most are living and suffering in various refugee camps. They should have human feelings and care for the people they wish to govern. Ishmael Ajay, yes, indeed. And this has been my problem with these leaders. I don't even want to call them leaders, because a leader is a person of service to the people. They have not proved to be that, all right? So I think we use this term very loosely, but that has been my major problem. Let's just call them leaders. With the leadership of South Sudan, they don't care much about the people of South Sudan. It is not their priority. I want. And the other side, I want. Has nothing to do with, okay, now we are together. So what does our people need? What should we do to our people? These people that we are fighting so hard to serve, to lead in this country. What do they want? So they've never done that. Chol Makori, you're saying IGAD's nations and South Sudan are one DNA. We need more help, please. Yes, and help is coming your way. Help has come from the Vatican. Help has come from the United States. Matter of fact, the sanctions have been coming in fast and furious to some of the top leadership there. I think, I don't know if it has been working, because that really has helped to put pressure on the government, because they've been targeting especially a lot of allies close to President Salva Kiir. So those are targeted sanctions. And also, and the latest one is for one of his vice presidents, right? And help is coming from Kenya. We have our special envoy there by the name Honorable Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka. Help is coming from Uganda. Help is coming from all over the place. And help is good. And I think it's wonderful to help the people of South Sudan. But until the leadership of South Sudan decides, we want peace, we want to rebuild our country, we want to be mindful of our people, we want our people to have the leaders that they deserve, who cares for them and puts them first. Until that part is solved, then we shall be coming here and having these stories here every day. And the clock is ticking to 22nd of February next month. And Abraham Wangila is saying, how serious is the current leadership of Angola? Is it serious in its accusations of Dos Santos' daughter, or just a political? A lot of it has to do with it's a political. Like the situation in Angola is very intricate, Mr. Abraham, and thank you so much for these questions you're asking here. It's very intricate. Remember, the leader right now was a very good friend to Dos Santos. Matter of fact, he served in the government of Dos Santos, Mr. Lourenço, for a very long time. Matter of fact, their children are engaged. The son of Lourenço is supposed to be marrying one of the daughters. Is it the other way around? But the children are engaged to be married, all right? So they used to be very tight political allies. And Mr. Dos Santos, matter of fact, is the one who handpicked the same situation that is happening now in Botswana between the predecessor Ian Khama and Mokgweetsi Masisi now, who is the president, right? And as I was coming here, I told you the UDC, the opposition party, who Mr. Ian Khama went and supported, is right now went and challenged the results right now. As I was coming to set, it is a case that is proceeding in one of the courts in Botswana. So let's just go back to Angola. So now he handpicked his predecessor, Mr. Lourenço, and Lourenço came in, and Mr. Dos Santos thought, you know what, this is a person who will protect my interest. This is a person who I know very well, and so I trust him to be the president after me. Remember, he was in power for 38 years. So in 38 years, you've done the worst in a country. You've ruined the economy, you've stolen, and now your daughter is the first, is the richest woman, in Africa. I'm not disputing her business acumen, but investigations have shown she benefited unfairly from her father being the president for 38 years. She's about 45 years of age. All right. Okay, so now after Lourenço came to power, he became his own man. And this Mr. Dos Santos saw over a lot of plunging of public resources during his 38 years in power. So some of these investigations are legit, but part of it also is just political witch hunt. They've disagreed, and Mr. Dos Santos was not very happy because he thought, I put you there. I made you president. I literally handpicked you. How dare you? And Mr. Lourenço, in wanting to prove that he's own man, he said, you know what? And then I'll go for you because a lot of corrupt dealings are happening under you as the president, and I will not come for you personally. But how about we start by investigating your children? So Isabella, her half-brother, and other people, and also some officials that were working under his government are being investigated. So part of it is legit, but also part of it is a political witch hunt. But the government has a legitimate case against the Dos Santos. It's only that the relationship there that is making things a bit complicated. So Donald Kimutai, you're saying don't forget to mention Kenya as amongst the shortlisted countries. On what? Please tell me, Kenya is shortlisted on what? I did not... shortlisted countries for what? I missed that. Please, Ronald Kimutai, tafadhali, give me the information so that we talk about it. So, Abraham Mongela, I hope I've answered all your questions today, all your queries today. All right, I try. So, yeah, so I hope you got the answer to that. But, yes, the investigations are legit, as much as the timing is suspect. And of course, Ms. Dos Santos, by the way, has said that she wants to come back and vie for the presidency of that country in 2022. Despite of all of that, she wants to come back and vie for the presidency. I don't know. Will that not open a Pandora box? And now all these things that happened during her father's 38 years in rule will come out, and will play out. If I was her, I probably wouldn't. Because the ghost from her father's leadership might come haunting her very badly, that she might not be able to handle. But she said she's running for the elections in Angola come 2022, and maybe that's why Lourenço is not very pleased about it. And she has the money. Yeah, part of it she stole, and part of it she's made, So Sidonio Givandas, thank you. You're saying corruption is always a conflict between the official and the person who is interested in the position and the power of the official. Unfortunately, it's not only Angola, it's happening in most of the countries. In Africa wants to move on. If Africa wants to move on, we must learn from stupid behaviors from countries like Angola, Mozambique, South Africa, yes, Kenya, Uganda. Not so much from Tanzania, but South Sudan, corrupt countries, South Africa, we must learn from these mistakes. We must. I've added a few to your list. Sidona Givandis, thank you so much. Ronald Kimutai, I'm still waiting for that list. You're saying Kenya is shortlisted in those countries. I want to know the list of what? Yeah, what list is that, Mr. Kimutai? Please let me know before. I just have like 5 minutes and then I'll be gone. And so the latest from Libya and what was, of course, over the weekend, Angela Merkel from the German Chancellor there convened a meeting there to discuss matters Libya. I'm very upset because we have an African Union here in this continent, that our countries pay a lot of money to sustain its activities, right? All the member states in the African Union, they all contribute to the running the affairs of that union, the African Union. And the African Union has deliberately refused to solve, especially under the leadership of Egyptian president, who is the current chairperson of the African Union, has refused to solve the crisis in Libya for obvious reasons. First of all, Egypt is a key player in those international interference there in Libya. So now, a European country, a wonderful European country by the name of Germany, took on the lead. An African Union showed up there as a participant. Do you know? How does this even make sense? You know. So now, world leaders agreed on Sunday to respect an arms embargo and back off from interfering with Libya, where forces from two rival governments are fighting for power. 12 world leaders, along with top representatives from the EU, the UN, African Union, and Arab League, held a one-day summit in Berlin. Participants agreed that the week-old truce. Remember, there's a week-old truce that Turkey asked for last Sunday, needs to become a more durable ceasefire. United Nations Security Secretary General Antonio Guterres said all sides need to put pressure on the warring parties in Libya. With different countries backing different sides in Libya, there has been growing concern that Libya will become another Syria. What do you mean Libya will become another Syria? Like Antonio Guterres, I know Syria is worse, but Libya is not better off at all. If they're not the same, then maybe it's worse. You know, Libya is torn, and the people who started this war, NATO, they went and they're sitting pretty. They should be ashamed of themselves. You know, they messed up this country, NATO. I think after the ceasefire, after things calm, they should come back and help rebuild Libya. I think they owe it to the people there in Libya. The US is quite, they're sitting pretty. Canada, other countries in NATO there, sitting pretty. And they're the ones who contributed, to destroying Libya today. It would have been easier to just kidnap Omar al-Bashir. Not Omar al-Bashir, but Gaddafi, sorry. It would have been easier just capture him, take him to where? Guantanamo Bay or somewhere. Not destroy the whole country. They've destroyed the whole country of Libya, which will take years to rebuild. Yeah, it's very sad, the reports when you see there. And so now let's see if these international players who have always worked to fueling this war in Libya, if at all, of course, the arms embargo was imposed by the United Nations. But some of these players have not been respectful of this arms embargo. And what is shocking is these players, the international players, who continue to fuel this war and who are in the United Nations. They're actually in the United Nations Security Council, permanent members. They are, 1 or 2 or 3 of them are permanent members there. And they're the ones who have violated this embargo and have been the one, giving arms to Khalifa Haftar. He has the most sophisticated, weapons, so he has been, and these members in the United Nations Security Council, permanent members, are the ones who have been supporting him. So you sit down, you discuss finding peace in Libya, and then the same thing you've said, you go against it. So it has been a merry-go-round thing when it comes to Libya, because the leaders who meet there, they have vested interest in Libya, and it has been very difficult to find a middle ground on finding a solution. It's just been a back and forth. I don't know. Of course, elections for a new African Union chairperson are coming up. And I heard that Cyril Ramaphosa, the reason why he's not attending the UK Africa Summit that is starting today in London there, where Zimbabwe was not, Zimbabwe was isolated. They did not invite Zimbabwe, but apparently they invited the opposition MDC party to participate in this. But this is because Britain is trying to reposition itself, so finding other deals because it's coming out of the EU. So it's trying to find new business partners and all of that across the world. So had a summit with the African head of states, and other African leaders are going. But Cyril Ramaphosa has said he's not coming because he has other serious problems in the country, including the crisis at ESCOM, the power plant, the national power plant there, and power company there, like the KPLC we have here in Kenya, Kenya Power and Lightning Company. So ESCOM is that one for South Africa, and also other matters that are urgent, according to him, for South Africans. But he said the meeting that is supposed to be happening in Davos, Switzerland, that is the World Economic Forum. Remember the one that happens in February, like in the middle of winter, they are in Davos, Switzerland. So he shall attend that. But this one, he skipped. So it was suspected that he skipped this meeting in the UK that is happening today, the summit, because Zimbabwe was excluded. So he's standing he's standing together with his brother Emerson Mnangagwa there. I don't know if that is the truth, because he's not come out and said that is why I'm not going to the UK. All right. But on the side note, he also said that the reason why he's not going to that summit in the UK is because he's trying to, is it to campaign or prepare or what do you call it? Trying to talk to other countries to support his bid to become the new AU chairperson, apparently. So, but it has not been made official, so let's just wait and see. I think that should be happening sometimes in February or thereabout, or just after that. So we shall keep you up to date. And also in Cameroon, of course, there will be a symposium that will be happening here in Nairobi for Cameroon. I don't know if it's for Amazonians or just Cameroon as a whole. So Chol Makori is saying, can IGAD's nation, including South Sudan, join together under one president and one citizen of one country? Geez, you think that that Museveni will agree to that? You want to spoil his party? He's been the president of Uganda for 34 years, unless he'll be the president of this IGAD thing. But no. You think? Because let me tell you, and I don't want to get into the politics of the East African community and the unity that has remained very elusive and other factors that have contributed to East African community becoming a very strong bloc. All right, it's a lot, and we don't even have time for that. But if you can't even solve that, you think we're going to have a big East African country? That is a wonderful thing, but I don't know. We have leaders. I don't know our leaders here, and also we are very suspicious about each other. Of course, Rwanda is having a problem with Uganda. Tanzanians are always suspicious of Kenyans, and we've seen a lot of trade in the borders being affected because of this or that reason, and so forth and so on. So until the integration of this East African community is really worked on, it's a long way to go. Rwanda and Burundi don't even talk. All right? Mr. Pierre Nkurunziza does not even leave Bujumbura after the attempted coup in 2015. He does not even attend this East African Community Head of States. In fact, last year it was supposed to happen, the 20th anniversary. In November, it failed. They pushed it to February, and there has been a lot of other issues that have been affecting this. So Abraham, you're saying before you finish, kindly comment on the handshake talk that Uhuru and Raila will be giving in the UK. I have no idea. A doctor yesterday talked about it. I don't have the intel. I think they're just going to show the world how, it's just politics. It's not that serious. And when you put the country first, which I think they did, even if now it has other political connotations or political agreements behind it, we don't know that. But, the peace that they had, the handshake that they had, somehow, saved this country from the lane it had taken, which might not have been very good, because now you can travel to these parts of the country which perhaps you not have, But the peace is I hope this is the start of a long-lasting solution, not just now. Because these political tones, they change. So we want something permanent. It's a good start. But there's still a lot to be done to realize a lasting peace in this country. A lot of this anger people walk around with, they stem from when Kenya became independent. They stem from 1992. They stem from a lot of years back. These are things that we must find an avenue where Kenyans can talk freely. And some of these issues can be sorted. Otherwise, if it's just the handshake and that's it, that will be cosmetic. It has to go deeper than that, because there's more to it than just Kenyans hating each other. There's a lot there that needs to be ironed out for us to really, really realize a peaceful Kenya. That is just my opinion. But the handshake is a good start. Has it worked to bring the country together or divide the country further? I think that depends on which political side you are on. But, that's just about it. And let me just read this. Oh my goodness, I'm past my my time here with a few minutes. That symposium that Cameroon is organizing in Kenya is the same to bring peace to Ambazonia, will not be different from the happened in Yaoundé in the name of national dialogue. Oh, really? Okay. Because I saw this news in the morning and I said, okay, so now this symposium is happening here in my country in April. You know what? Maybe we shall find a few participants from that who are key, and we could talk to them and just find out what's really happening there. But of course, the U.S. Secretary of State in charge of African Affairs, Mr. Tibor Nagy, has said, you know what, the only way to find a solution to the Ambazonia problem with the Cameroonian government is to allow the decentralization. Okay, that is what he said, and recognize the identity and permit the Ambazonians to allow them to run their own activities. So in other words, he's saying give these people a referendum and let them decide on what's good for themselves. That is what the U.S. Secretary of State in charge of African Affairs, Mr. Tibor Nagy, said. All right. So that is just about it. I hope that you've enjoyed the show. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Abraham Wangila Wafula. Thank you so much, Chor Makor. Ishmael Aji. Let me just read your comment and then I'll be saying my goodbyes. And you're asking, what at all does he want? 38 years. It's about time, Africa, we stand together and tell our leaders enough is enough. Most leaders are to some extent useless, spending a number of years without doing what is expected of them. Remaining in power without serving citizens properly is meaningless. As for the AU is another story. Does AU really exist? If it does, we want to hear the AU leadership again, their aims. Some of us have read from books and AU chatter concerning the symbolic aims. If AU is not dead, it should wake up. It's a shame. It is quite a shame. It is extremely quite a shame. When I was watching Angela Merkel sitting there sharing this meeting in Berlin and giving us the update about the latest peace efforts the country is spearheading for Libya, and the AU was just a participant like the EU. AU was just a participant, and we're funding it. Man, I was mad, but I'm happy. Whichever way, we need to find peace in Libya. Thank you so much. This has been Good Morning Africa. My name is Miriam Gutu. It has been a pleasure. I'll see you later.